morning we're going to be talking a little bit about pensions, but just I'm going to keep it at a kind of very basic level. There's some interesting things happening in the pensions market. We're beyond accounting. We have clients that are SMEs, mostly business owners, and most of them have a need to kind of put money from the company into a pension scheme for their future. David Walls here is from Zurich Pensions, one of the biggest pension providers in Ireland, and we've been working with David to provide solutions or to give people access to pensions for the last couple of years, and we're trying to just kind of demystify it and make it just kind of easier to understand. The world of pensions is, I think it in some ways is overly complex, and people kind of switch off as a result, which is a
Correct.
shame really, because there's some really good tax advantages there, and we're all going to need it. So we're just going to keep this short and kind of light, and just see if we can offer kind of access to understanding of what the main kind of things that a business owner can do to kind of kick off and start providing for their future. So David, I suppose for us, it's about people. Typically, they own a company. They might have a majority shareholding in that company. The company is profitable. They're on a salary with that company. It could be just them, or it could be a few partners or directors, whatever. The company will have some value, and I think a lot of our kind of business owners are thinking, well, that's my pension, or I'll hopefully have paid off my
Sure.
family house, and that can work out fine. But
Of
sometimes it
course.
doesn't, and our recommendation to people is that have your business, have your family house paid off, but also have a pension. It's no harm, it's the right thing to do, and it's also very tax efficient. So if you take a
Yeah.
lump of I don't know, you could put 50 grand a year into a pension, and it's tax free to the company. There's no taxes on you personally, and then there's no taxes on the investment. And then when you hit 60, you can take a lump of it out as cash, and the rest you can kind of drip feed in your retirement. It's from a financial perspective, it's a no-brainer. Um,
Yeah.
Now, where it gets tricky is people start saying, "Oh, what scheme and how do I do it? And should I go this way? Should I go that way? And what are the changes and the legislation?" And then people just run dry with their understanding and their interest, because I think pensions actually scare people, because as soon as you talk about pensions, people are saying, "Oh shit, I don't have a pension, or I don't have enough. What am I going to do? This is scary," which is a shame, because then it turns people off. Whereas if they can just get a basic understanding and do something in this space, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I absolutely, Rory. I mean, I think that's trying. You're right. It can get hugely technical and people turn off and blah blah. But quite simply, I mean, I'd say to there's a couple of things there for me. One is very specific to your business, both you personally and your type of customer, because you and beyond are probably not too far a successful SME to many of your customers. Like, it's first of all, it's kind of like, as I've said to friends or whatever, what are you going to use for money when you retire? So, some element is, and sometimes I see too much of it is tax driven and tax effective, and it is, and that's great. But the core of a pension was, I should put aside some of my income today, to allow me to have consumption, or to have an ability to have a more comfortable retirement in the future. And if I can do that in a tax efficient manner in investment funds, which we're not going to go into, there's a suite of them, but into an appropriate fund that's going to build me up a lump sum, which I can use to live on in retirement, is huge. So that's one. That's the concept. And otherwise, now again, as you say, you have business owners who've got business to sell, and that's one facet of it. But then there's the tax and whatever. Employees like me, I absolutely, at some point in the not too distant future, my pretty good salary is just going to stop, and be replaced by 13 grand a year. Thanks, when I eventually hit 66. The other aspect that is very important, particularly around really good financial planners, advisors, and accountancy firms, is the concept of extracting wealth from your business. And that's huge. And as you know, and we certainly ain't going to go into in this few minutes, is that there have been changes in legislation that what's known as one of the products is the PRSA. Again, doesn't help people with all the acronyms and different products, but is now allowing people who have got cash in their company, whilst the 2 million absolute limit of a pot, they won't let you have tax relief on building up more than 2 million, which is a lot of money and far more. The average pension pot we see maturing is about 80 grand. So what it does allow now is people who have money to get it out now without sort of limits and tax issues, and put large sums into their top up their pensions now with pretty large sums. So that's huge, you know, the kind of concept and where the market is at. It's never been more buoyant, because, as you would know better than most, a lot of your businesses are doing extremely well, your clients.
Well, they work bloody hard, and some do well, and some don't. You know, it's hard out there. You know, to make surplus,
Do any not
cash
work
for
hard
this.
and still do really well? Because you could sell that secret sauce.
I don't think I have any example of that. No, I think it's just a
Good.
given. Yeah. I do. Yeah, no, I think people do work very hard out there. Yeah, if they're in their own business, and it's a shock for many people. And to be honest,
Well, a pension pot can be the reward at the end of that rainbow, you
well,
know.
yeah, they do have the opportunity to kind of do something, in this space. We always recommended to clients with a company that they set up an executive pension plan, which was a company scheme, and then the
Mm,
company can put money in on their behalf, which is perfectly fine and it's the right thing to do for a lot of people. Um, but the recent thing is that the PRSA that you mentioned now
mm,
is another option where a company can pay in virtually unlimited amounts into a PRSA on behalf.
mm,
But I guess it doesn't matter which someone has, whether it's a PRSA or an executive pension plan. It's all the same thing. What surprises,
mm.
like it's all feeding into what you're saying about having some money when you're retiring. It
Yeah.
surprises me that the average fund is only 80,000, because that's not going to
Yeah,
give
but
you a lot of income, is it?
not of an executive pension now, of a business owner. If a business owner bothers to set up a pension, but yes, they're normally in the hundreds of thousands. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
a lot of, I mean, that would include, say, self-employed carpenters or paint, real small businesses, or employees of companies where they're small companies that don't
yeah.
provide a pension scheme like Zurich do, and they've been tipping in with a small few quid. Look, and anything is better than nothing, it's.
Yeah, we try and encourage people to think like, you know, you really need to get to, I don't know, like 500,000, or even, if your business is doing particularly well, up to 1 million. Yeah. Well, or if you go up to the 2 million fund, but yeah, but like, I mean, putting 300 quid a month into a pension isn't isn't enough to build up that. So if the company has profits, you know, well, it depends your age profile. I suppose if you start in your 20s,
Yeah,
great.
big
But
one. Yeah,
like a lot of people that are actually running successful business that we see, they're already in their 40s and some in their 50s. So they're not that far off
yeah.
retirement. So we're saying to them,
It's never
put
too late,
put 5 grand a month into your pension.
and maybe more for people who might look at this, who are your clients, might be business owners, who might have kids in jobs. It's never too young, and the magical power of compounding. If somebody in their 20s or 30s, I tell this story for a reason. I remember a friend asked me to look at something about his pension, younger than me and a good few years ago, only in his 40s. And I was expecting him to have a pot of 50 or 60 grand or something, and he had hundreds of thousands in his 40s in his pensions. And I went, wow, that's really surprising. It's far more than anybody normally has at your age. And he said, yeah, but Dave, remember, my dad was a bank manager, and he just made me put in a small amount of my very first salary into a pension. And thus will retire, now has a successful business and has taken all the tax advantages of whatever, but again, can't start too early. But as you say, what you are finding is people have focused on their business, but if their business is successful, it's never too late to then,
Well, that's
and
what
if you
we're
can
finding,
afford
that
substantial amounts.
they haven't had opportunities, they haven't had surplus cash, and to be honest, it's a worry for them. Like if you're in your 40s and you have very little pension, or maybe no pension, it's kind of, oh my God, it's a scary topic. But you're right. If they start then and they're running a successful business, they can be putting 30, 40, 50,000 a year into the pension. And by the time they retire, they've caught up. So it's not too
Well,
late.
let me put one number out there at you. The PRSA product that the legislation has changed a little over a year ago, but it's kind of taken really till this year for people to sort of cop onto it, and being careful what I say, but also going, a future change of government might not be so generous with reliefs for wealthy people's pensions. But we would have seen the average lump sum or annual investment into a PRSA product be in the region of 18 or 19,000 euros. That in this year in 2023 has gone up to over 90. Now, a lot of that is, as I say, it's not someone necessarily committing to 90 grand a year to a pension before people get really scared and go, sure, that's so mad. A lot of that is where people are making a one-off payment because they realize under the new tax legislation, they've got £1 million in their company and they're writing a check for 300 or 400 grand, or 300 or 400 grand for them and their business partner, or which is often their spouse in SMEs, as you know.
There's an opportunity now that just wasn't there before, and it's a no-brainer for people that know what they're doing. Yeah, no, I can see that. David, before we finish, can you just outline what the norm is for people on retirement? Like, is it 60 that is the key age, and then it's what, a quarter of their fund they take in cash, and the rest goes into a bank account that you draw down anytime you want until retirement? Is that pretty much it, or is that too simple?
Yeah. An advantage to starting later, an advantage to pensions, is people are living and healthier and working longer, typically. And I guess that probably applies to your type of customer, an SME, more so than a Zurich employee. But yeah, look, there are just there are revenue rules, because the revenue say we give you very generous tax reliefs, as you say, going in, because let's just think this through. It suits the government to have a huge cohort of the population not falling back on the state and being comfortable in retirement and consuming and buying cars and holidays and better groceries or eating out, because all that, clearly you have a large percentage of the population, if they have money in their pocket, better for the government, better for everybody. So they encourage with strong tax reliefs. However, they say, look, it must be used for long-term pension. You can't just for tax. So it's typically after the age of 60, slight nuances depending on the product. So typically in the 60 to 65 plus. Now you can phase retirement, you can mature your pension fund and yet continue to run your business. Again, nuances that you can talk through with individual circumstances. But broadly speaking, these days, most people at some point in their 60s take if they're lucky enough to build up, which is not inconceivable. And we see certainly 800 to €1 million pension pots all the time. They mature that and the government says, okay, you can take 25% tax free. That's another tax incentive. So say I've got £1 million, 250 grand, so there's a small bit of tax in that, tax free up to 200, but I can take a big chunk of that tax free, and the rest of it typically then, as you say, is in what's an approved retirement account. And you sit down with your advisor and you make a plan around that, and you basically take income off that throughout your retirement to supplement your living. Whether you take a large income and get it down to nothing and leave your children nothing, but compared to the old annuity where you bought X amount a year, typically now people have a chunk of change. They can live off the revenue make you take 4% per annum, 4 or 5% per annum. We can live off that, maybe dip into it a bit, but it's another asset to pass on to their family, potentially on debt.
So it's almost like you become your own employer and you put yourself on a salary from this fund. So 1 year it could be 10 grand.
And you really need to work and you really need to work close with your advisor on setting that up and reviewing that on an ongoing basis. And that's
taxed, isn't it? That pension is taxed.
Whatever you take out then is income, as well as maybe any state pension, other pensions, other incomes, consulting, still getting something from your business, whatever. It's purely income.
Probably makes sense to keep that at 40 or 50 grand, because that's when you're using the 20% tax bands and stuff like that.
You're going to be on my pay grade now, Rory.
No, I don't think there was anything complex in what we spoke about there, David. I think it's people just getting into the system. I suppose just to say, if people want to, more advice on pensions or want to start a pension, they can come to us at Beyond, and we can connect them with the right product at Zurich. So it must go through a broker. You don't do direct stuff. So the first point is us, and then we.
Absolutely. I know
But
you need to be.
it
You
is a
need to be
no-brainer.
advised from a tax and everything perspective. Yeah.
Very good. Look, thank you for your time, David, and
Rory, a pleasure
we'll talk
as
again.
always.
Cheers.